Ah, my chance for a heroic death. No, it doesn't wipe the slate clean, dude. Well, the play is the thing, for whence I catch the conscience of the king. Dude, what are you talking about? We're in space, there's no kings. Oh well, I'll just die then. Hello and welcome to another episode of TrekHammer, where we're talking about every single episode of Star Trek, from the beginning to the modern episodes. Today, we're still with the original series, where we're talking about episode 13, The Conscience of the King. Okay, this went from one of those weird episodes that's used in trivia quizzes because it's the episode where Dr. McCoy, while drunk, by the way, in sickbay, says that Vulcan was conquered. So it's always there.
In what episode did Dr. McCoy claim Vulcan had been conquered?
Conscience of the King.
But it's actually turned out to be one of my favourites. So, spoiler alert. It's a great episode. It's also the most Next Generation that the original series gets. We begin with Captain Kirk and one of his old friends watching a Shakespeare play that's being performed by a troupe of travelling thespians. Try saying that 3 times fast. And it's actually a pretty well done play. It's standard Star Trek fare, but it's good. It's Shakespeare. It's pretty good. It's Macbeth. One of my personal favourites. Then we find out the reason why Kirk is here watching this play on this planet. The planet is called Q. That might become worth watching later on, but not in this series, in Next Generation. You see, the references to TNG are all there. So the reason that Kirk is on the planet is because his friend who is on this planet has invited him over to take a look at one of the actors in this troupe, Anton Karigian, because he recognised him, and he thinks Kirk will recognise him too. Anton Karigian looks very similar and sounds very similar to TOS the Executioner, a guy who committed a genocide and then disappeared 20 years ago, so he's never been put on trial for his crimes. This is not something that Kirk takes lightly, this claim, which of course you wouldn't, but he's intrigued enough to start his own investigation. He actually calls in a favour of the starship captain that is going to be picking this troop up and says, don't pick them up. I'll take them on my ship. We'll take them to our next destination. So he gets them on board via that pretense of your lift's not been able to come, and then gets one of them, the daughter of Anton, Lenore Karigian, to try and woo him and ask if they can get a lift, essentially. So, in payment, they perform a play on the Enterprise. We get all of the troupe onto the Enterprise, and before they go, at a diplomatic soiree, again, this is very TNG, it turns out that the guy that invited Kirk down to the planet has gone missing. Kirk goes off and finds where he's gone, finds a body. He's been murdered. He's not the only one who's been murdered. It turns out that there were 11 people who could recognise TOS the Executioner, and they're all been bumped off. So Kirk calls in that favour, gets the troop onto the Enterprise, and begins his own investigation, because this is serious now. His friend's gone, and he knows there's a problem here. Once they're all on board, Kirk checks the records to see who else is a witness to TOS the Executioner, who saw him and is still alive. Turns out Kirk is, because we already knew that, but so is Riley. Riley's the guy who was in engineering singing those songs in the naked time. Well, he's back, and Kirk transfers him to engineering to keep him out of the way. So he's back in engineering for one more time. Good reference. In fact, he's at exactly the same position in engineering as he was when he was singing all the songs. Kirk's moved him there to keep him out of the way so that the theatre troupe wouldn't have access to this guy who can recognise TOS the Executioner while Kirk does his investigation. Well, that doesn't really go to plan, because Riley is bored, feels lonely. He's the only guy in engineering at the time, and he phones the rec room on the communicators and says, look, is Uhura there? Is that who I can hear playing a song? Can't you sing me a song? I'm lonely. So she does a recital. Again, this is so TNG. They've got music being performed by the crew in the rec room. It's so TNG. And he's listening along. He feels less lonely. But while he's distracted by this, someone comes in and puts poison into his drink. He has a drink. He falls over. He's dying. But the communication line is two-way. So when Uhura finishes her song and says, "So, did you like that, Riley?" she can hear him choking to death on the floor in engineering. Of course, medical emergency. So we get them into the sick bay, and he's going to be okay. He's going to be fine, but it now means that McCoy is having to look after him. So McCoy had a few drinks earlier on while talking to Spock, by the way. Not entirely sure he should have been drinking in sickbay. That seems a bit weird, but we already know from The Enemy Within that he keeps booze in one of the cupboards in the medibay, which is just weird, but apparently that's what happens. And he's there tending to this guy. He's going to be okay. They caught him in time. He's going to be okay. But, of course, McCoy now has to put a medical report together. This guy overhears it. He overhears what's going on and why he was targeted. So, he's not happy because Kodos killed his family. Meanwhile, McCoy's been having a chat with Mr. Spock. Mr. Spock is getting a bit wary of why Kirk is doing an investigation, but won't tell anyone else what's going on. So Spock does his own investigation, comes to the same conclusion. Anton Karidian very well may be Kodos the Executioner. Spock is now on the case as well. So Spock goes and confronts Kirk, saying, "Look, you should have let me in on this, blah, blah, blah." McCoy comes along as well and tells him, "Look, Spock's only doing his job here. Don't go after him." Again, McCoy, for the second story in a row, is defending Spock, which we don't see an awful lot in later episodes, certainly not in the films, where they're basically at odds all of the time. So that's quite good. I can see why the Kirk-Spock-McCoy dynamic became a foundational thing, because right here at the start, it is. Even if it ended up with Kirk and Spock being best friends and McCoy kind of being the third wheel. But at the moment, it's the core thing. So McCoy then goes back to check on sickbay, and suddenly we hear this noise because a phaser is on overload somewhere in Kirk's quarters. Not happy with just going after Riley, someone's now targeting Kirk. Spock helps Kirk look for the phaser until Kirk tells him, "No, go and get everyone off this deck. Evacuate the deck and the other decks around it, because if this thing goes off, everyone's dead." So Spock rushes off and starts coordinating the evacuation of the area. Very good. Kirk eventually finds the phaser because someone's hidden it in the red alert light, which is not the best place to put it because Kirk has called for red alert. So you can see it in the light. It's a very silly thing. Clearly, whoever did this wasn't thinking it through and was acting on desperation. So he gets the phaser and turns it off and everything's fine. But now he knows someone on board is killing the witnesses, killing the people who can identify Kodos. So he goes and confronts Kodos, gets him to say one of Kodos's famous speeches, and compares the voice records. They're almost a match. Not quite, I mean, it has been 20 years, so I personally wouldn't have expected it to be a perfect match, because people's voices change. It's close enough. Kirk now knows what's going on, and he thinks Kodos has been targeting people who can identify him. But here's where the twist comes in, which is just perfect. This guy, Anton Karidian, Kodos, he is so broken up by what he did. Because he picked people to die to save others. From his point of view, he had to kill some so that others would live because there wasn't enough food. There'd been an outbreak of a disease that destroyed all of the food. Well, most of the food. And either everyone starved to death or some died straight away to allow others to live. And then a resupply ship got there early. Because of the disease, they'd been going as fast as they could, at least that's my interpretation of what they say, and got there early to save people. He didn't have to kill everyone. He didn't have to kill them. He didn't have to commit the genocide. He made the wrong call. But as he says, if that ship hadn't got there, he would have saved people instead of being a murderer. And Kirk says, yes, but that's not what happened. You made your decision and you have to live with it. Which is exactly what Kirk needs to say. It is entirely the point. History is one of those things where you could have, you should have, you would have. If you'd known, and hindsight's 20/20 and all of that, but he made his decision, he's got to live with it. Fair point. Kirk is absolutely right. But it turns out this guy's absolutely torn up, and he's sick of hiding. He's not running anymore. And he hasn't been killing the people who could identify him. He doesn't want to accept that he was Kodos the Executioner. But he's not hiding from it in the same way that Kirk expected. So, while Kirk is analysing all the information and deciding what to do, the play continues. And Riley turns up at the play, ready to kill Kodos, because Kodos killed his family. Kirk realises what's going on when McCoy sends him a message saying Riley's not in sickbay, and he may have overheard my log explaining what was going on. So Kirk goes and confronts Riley and talks him down. It's perfect. It is so TNG. Kirk doesn't fight his crewman. He doesn't castigate his crewman. He doesn't say anything but, I understand, but this is not the way, essentially, and talks him down. The crewman, he's absolutely distraught. But Kirk understands why. So Riley goes off. I'm not entirely sure he actually gets punished for it either, which is nice. And then the final twist happens, because Kirk is confronted by Lenore, the person who came to him and asked for a lift and said in exchange, we'll do the play, blah, blah, blah. Turns out she's the murderer. She takes the gun off Kirk, the phaser, and aims it at him. She's going to kill him. And Kodos comes in, and Anton Kodos comes in and sees what's going on, and he is absolutely devastated because he didn't want anyone else to die for what he'd done in the past, and he certainly didn't want his 19-year-old kid to start killing for what he did 20 years ago. Basically, she's the only pure thing in his life at this point, from his point of view, and she's killing to save him. So, he steps in as she fires on Kirk. He steps in to save Kirk. She shoots her father. Q, absolutely massive breakdown on her part because she is absolutely nuts and distraught at the same time. Kirk arrests her. Happy ending. What an episode! That's like the Cliff's Notes version, but what an episode! It is so well done. I was on the edge of my seat for most of it. It was just so well done. The parallels to Macbeth are wonderful. I love that it was there. So, of course, she's Lady Macbeth, the one that keeps pushing Macbeth to go on by the end, to kill and kill and kill again. It's so good. This is a top-class episode. Would I mark it down for anything? To be honest with you, the only thing is that bit with McCoy. He shouldn't be drinking in sickbay. If he's still on duty, he shouldn't be drinking. If he's off duty, he shouldn't be drinking in sickbay. He should be in his quarters. It's just weird. And the bit about Vulcan being conquered, it's like, I just don't get it. Was that supposed to be part of the narrative for Vulcan, or was that just a slip-up? I don't get it. So those are the only parts that I would mark down. So I have to say, this is going to get a warp factor of 9.7 because it's that good. The weirdnesses can only knock it down a slight amount. It is so good. So, warp factor 9.7, Mr. Sulu. Really top-class episode. Absolutely recommended to anyone. On the edge of my seat for most of it. Wonderful. Absolutely fantastic episode. Definitely recommend it. But that's my opinion. What do you think? Do you like it as much as I do? Do you think it's a little drawn out? Would you agree that it's very next generation for an original series episode? Let me know in the comment section down below. Let's have a conversation about Star Trek. Always love to have a conversation about Star Trek with you guys. But until next time, I've been Zoe Cook Robinson. You've been watching TrekHammer. Live long and prosper. If you like the show, please consider supporting me on Patreon. It really does help create future videos. That's patreon.com/Zoe Kirk Robinson. And I've got an extra special thanks going out to Chief89, Sam Yates, Retro Mickey 82, Mo Henry, and George Bortorini. Thank you so much, guys.